If dope addicts and prostitutes are plaguing the streets of your city, chances are someone is being paid off at City Hall. If gambling is rampant in town and public funds are disappearing, chances are there's a cover-up going on at City Hall. Who pays off who? Who covers up what? Tonight, 60 Minutes looks at charges of payoff and cover-up in one American city where vice runs rampant and a handful of men run the city as they please. New York? Detroit? Los Angeles? Chicago? Wrong. Not this time.
The corruption we're talking about is in a city far off in the hills of Wyoming, in the bone-dry country they call Sweetwater County.
Sweetwater County is a land of vastness and long vistas, of rocks, boulders, sagebrush, and moving sand. Its hub is Rock Springs. They say that when you come out here, you should set your watch back 50 years. That in these shale hills, you can still find some of the old-fashioned virtues of life in the West, and more to the point, some well-known vices that never seem to go out of style.
When the sun goes down in Rock Springs, the town becomes a western sin city. Hookers openly work the streets and the bars, each of them earning a minimum of $1,000 a week.
Well, what can you spend 30?
Well, what kind of work for 30?
What kind of work do you think you're going to get? The more you spend, the more you can do. Like I say, I don't know what you want to spend.
Now, if you're saying, so what? Remember, this is not New York or New Orleans or Chicago. This is Rock Springs, with more working hookers than you can shake a wallet at. By conservative estimate, prostitution alone is a $2 million a year business here in this little Wyoming town. A special night lens enabled us to film it all in almost total darkness. What we are exploring tonight are charges that there's organized vice with organized protection involving influential people who run this town. This is the way it works. There are 4 bars that feed off the trade, some with gambling in the back room. And where there are prostitutes and pimps, there are always drugs. When the bars close, action shifts to Earl Dotsey's Townsend Club, an after-hours joint, 2 a.m. to dawn. We could not film inside, but it's shoulder to shoulder, girls and their johns, and almost a guarantee of a fight a night. The local police will hurry to stop a fight, but hardly ever to arrest for prostitution. By daylight, this street could be any small town in the West.
There's nothing new about prostitution in Rock Springs. Indeed, it's an old tradition here, going back 75, 100 years ago, in the mining camp and early railroading days. This street, K Street, where the ladies of the evening now hustle in the open, there were old-style brothels. Over there, above what is now the pawn shop, was the Royal. Down the street, above what is now the OK Bar and Lounge, was the Ritz. And on this side of the street, above what is now the new Grand Cafe, was the Delamar. And they had what was called the Cheyenne Room. They spelled it S-H-Y-A-N-N.
The brothels were part of a boomtown past from the railroad and mining days. This has always been a rough little city. Butch Cassidy was a butcher here. Then he and his wild bunch hid out in the nearby hills. And when the Union Pacific brought in cheap Chinese laborers to mine the coal to run the line, the local citizenry killed 300 Chinese one day in the Great Chinese Massacre of 1885. About 20,000 people live here now, almost double what it was just 5 years ago, because of an energy boom that has hit this whole region. Rock Springs even had a tent city for a while to handle the overflow. As it has been for a century, it is the underground richness of Sweetwater County that powers Rock Springs. Oil rigs by the dozens, and coal and construction too. It is the roughnecks who work the rigs, and the womenless men who drill and mine and build, who also fuel the prostitution and the gambling and the narcotics trade. It's all part of the Rock Springs tradition, except that now the party's getting rough. There are shootings and killings now. And one night, outside the Astro Lounge down the block from K Street, 2 of the prostitutes got into a fight with a man in a parking lot. After a lot of shouting, he started chasing them. They then turned on him with knives. The man was badly cut in the face and collapsed bleeding behind a car, out of range of our camera. The local police claim they can't close down the vice, but outside law enforcement officers say it's corruption by public officials that makes Rock Springs a wide-open town. Beverly Norodwoski was an undercover agent for the county, working the streets in Rock Springs.
Okay, I was working in undercover capacity, and we made contact with a pimp. I was a junkie, and my partner was attempting to buy me the dope I needed.
This was your cover?
Yes. And it led into, he might be interested in bringing some white chicks into the Rock Springs area. And this pimp stated that, no problem, bring them in. It works this way. You will be invited to a meeting of all the pimps. You will discuss what you want to do, arrangements will be made, and it'll be agreed upon. And you don't have to worry about the heat, meaning the police. All the cops are bought.
Judy Compton worked undercover for the state in Rock Springs, posing as a prostitute. Sherman McClellan runs the field force for the Wyoming Division of Criminal Investigation. They call him Shaft. In Rock Springs, he posed as Judy's pimp.
Were you hassled by the police?
No, not at all. The police, we've seen them several times on K Street in their cars. Never was any attempt ever made, even though at the time, we were dressed very much like, or I was dressed very much like a prostitute. I have seen police cars, city police cars parked in parking lots on the street, soliciting sexual favors from the prostitutes.
Narcotics. Any narcotics activity to speak of?
Yes, it is. It has a very high rate of narcotics trafficking. It really does. I would think that most of it is just a distributorship to other areas in the United States as far as it's coming in.
I mean, a pass-through point?
Yes, a pass-through point. And coming through Rock Springs, you have the element of the pimps there to move it from one location to another.
Any way this could be going on and the city fathers not know about it?
Absolutely not.
Definitely not.
Personal opinion. The police chief knows about it?
Yes.
I would say very definitely so.
Sheriff know about it?
Yes.
Yes.
Mayor know about it?
Yes.
Members of the city council know about it?
Yes.
Yes.
County attorney know about it?
Yes.
State attorney general know about it?
Yes.
Yes.
Governor know about it?
Yes.
Yes.
For a time last spring, it looked as though a cleanup was on its way. Rock Springs hired an experienced police officer to overhaul the force. Clyde Kemp moved here with his wife to become director of public safety. 3 months later, when he had just begun to make changes, Kemp was fired.
How long before you began to see what you thought were signs of possible corruption?
About 3 weeks.
What was your first sign?
The open prostitution, the open narcotics trafficking, and open gambling. And I started to take a look at this, and I was told by members of the city council and the mayor that I was moving just a little too fast to suit them.
All right, now this is a serious accusation, and let's be specific. What did the council members tell you?
I was told by the police commission of the city council that they wanted prostitution in that town, and I was to leave it alone.
Did they put it that specifically?
Exactly that specifically.
Who else, if anybody, besides those 3 council members, told you that?
The mayor, Wataha, told me I was moving too fast.
Told you directly?
Yes.
In person?
Yes.
Mr. Kemp's a liar, and I'd tell him to his face.
The mayor, Paul J. Wataha.
Mayor, I've heard it said that this is the toughest town in Wyoming. Is that true?
I disagree.
Not the toughest town for prostitution, gambling, vice, dope?
No. I would deny it. I don't think we have any more than anywhere else, and I feel that, my own opinion, that there's less vice in the state of Wyoming than there might be in one block in New York City.
Paul Wataha has been mayor of Rock Springs for almost 20 years. It's a part-time job. He is also an accountant, and his accusers say Mayor Wataha is a part of the corrupt system that protects vice in Rock Springs. On the one hand, he is the mayor. On the other hand, he does the books for Jake's Bar, the Astro, the A&D, and the after-hours Townsend Club, which profit from the vice.
I think they have to have a service. There's other firms. Maybe there wouldn't be other firms, and as long as I'm just doing the job that I'm hired to do, and do it in my conscience, or if the city attorney might draw a lease or whatever, I don't think there's anything wrong with him.
Except when it gets to the point where he tells you to leave the prostitution, the gambling, alone. I was told by officers when I took office that they were not allowed to patrol or get out of their vehicles on K Street where these 4 locations exist.
If Mr. Kemp thought that there was impropriety, I think he was derelict in his duty by not coming forth and exposing it.
He said he did come forth and that you turned him down.
He's a liar.
Clyde Kemp was fired before he could trace any payoffs that led to protection. But state investigators had traced the flow of money from Dotsey's Townsend Club, even used marked money to show how the cash changed hands. Neil Compton helped make that case as a state undercover agent, and for 4 years he headed the Criminal Investigation Division of Wyoming.
What you see is a flow of money from the prostitutes and the gambling to the subject named Earl Dotsey, who runs the Townsend Club, and After Hours Club opens approximately 1 a.m. in the morning, and that money and that connection between Dotsey and Wataha, relative to Wataha, who is the mayor being Dotsey's accountant, that money flow can be traced to there. We know that money goes to the police, approximately $2,500 a week in payoffs to the police.
Now you say you know that. How do you know that?
By 2 independent informants who have reported that to us in the last 60 days.
Serious charge. Can you prove that?
I think that the informants would, in front of a grand jury, testify to that. That's correct. They are very scared people. We had to go to Arizona to interview one of them.
If Mr. Compton knew these activities were taking place, and if our task force were as close to him as they were, I think they had a responsibility to come before this city council in this room and point it out to this council the violations, or to go to the county attorney, file any charges they might have.
Now, when asked that, and when I interviewed him, I asked him that, not in those words, but in so many words. His answer was that the fix was always in here.
I think he's a liar.
The mayor's accusers say he not only provides protection, but receives it, avoiding criminal prosecution. The specific charge involved embezzling $12,000 in merchandise from the Buy Right drugstore. The mayor was both a customer at the store and its accountant, and the owner, Dooch Piai, and his wife, showed us how the embezzlement worked. Several times a month, the mayor would make a payment on his account at the store and get a receipt, like this one, for $10. Then when he got it at his office to do the books, the Piais say, it would be forged with a stroke of a pen to make it $110, not just $10, credited to the mayor's account.
Embezzlement?
Well, that's what I'd call it.
The mayor claims he had permission to discount his bills from the Piai's partner, now dead. But prosecutors allowed him to pay back the $12,000, plus costs, for a total of almost $25,000, and never pressed embezzlement charges against him. In light of that case, the question is, how does the mayor manage to remain mayor?
Well, it puzzles us, too. And we felt after we had pressed the charges, then other people would take over and do what we would expect them to do as city officials. But nothing's been done, and he's still our mayor of my town. Makes me sick.
Shortly after the mayor heard we had talked with the Piais, seen their evidence, this little letter began circulating around town. Addressed to Dear Homemaker, signed Homemakers for Decency. It says the Piais want to destroy our mayor and his family, asking the reader to call the mayor and tell him we appreciate the job he is doing for us, urging the reader to buy your drugs and other needs from decent merchants, not the Piais.
Again, about the mayor, Clyde Kemp.
I think he's involved in organized criminal activity in the town.
Does he have the town in his hand, under his control?
Absolutely. Almost an absolute dictatorship.
Is he honest?
I don't think so.
Can you prove it?
If I had a grand jury, I could.
I'd be willing to face a grand jury. And I would hope that Mr. Kemp would take it under the penalties of perjury, too.
The mayor is now being investigated by several law enforcement agencies, Internal Revenue among them.
A couple of items from a reporter's notebook. There are things in this town that we could not film. For example, A number of people told us that they would gladly go before a grand jury with information they say they have about money changing hands among police and politicians, payoffs, misuse of public funds. But they would not agree to be interviewed for broadcast for fear, they say, of reprisals against themselves, their wives, their children, their grandchildren.
One scandal involved the local hospital, allegations of fraud and mismanagement, even charges that it is somehow a cover for trafficking in narcotics. At City Hall, charges that leaks from here and from the county sheriff's office tip off suspects before police raids. And even the parking meters, suspicions of rip-offs of meter fees and fines. Who speaks out? Hardly anybody. The local newspaper, the Daily Rocket Miner, rarely editorializes. The local radio station editorializes, and co-owner Bill Lusmore caught commercial pressure when he spoke out about the hospital scandal and a political candidate, but he has not editorialized about the obvious vice and corruption on K Street.
Very true.
Why?
I was thinking about this not too long ago, and the answer I finally came up with in my own mind was fear. Is it organized crime? I don't know. You know, is the mafia involved? I don't know. But when I got to thinking about it, I started thinking about some of the people and the kinds of people that I was going to make very, very, very angry. Before, with the other editorials, I was playing with political power, which is maybe not quite so dangerous as playing with organized crime, if indeed it is organized, or with playing with essentially what is a criminal element. People that deal narcotics have a tendency to get awful nasty.
What we have here is a blend of permissiveness and criminality. Violations of the law, failure to prosecute, cover-ups, allegations of much more. It is beyond journalism in this case to establish innocence and guilt. Many people here are saying now that job can be done only by starting with an honest grand jury.
Corruption in Rock Springs is only part of a scandal that now stretches to the state capitol in Cheyenne. It involves charges against the governor, the attorney general, and the Democratic chairman of Wyoming. Next week on 60 Minutes, high noon in Cheyenne.